You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for hitting that play button. This is another episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast. Before we get to today's episode, I just want to say a couple of really quick things. Number one, again, my TV pilot Game Over is now available for free. It's 100% free on YouTube right now. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do. It will also be linked in the show notes. It's actually embedded on the show notes page at davebullis.com. I'm also just tweeting about it a lot. And there's a blog post about it, Game Over, Making a TV Pilot, and the pseudo counterpoint to that called How Not to Make a TV Pilot, which I did both of these. And How Not to Make a TV Pilot is my interview on Alex Ferrari's indie film Hustle, where I go into details about things to avoid. You know, if you have experienced these things, you become empathetic towards it. If you haven't experienced them, you become sort of sympathetic towards it. So I'm just... Again, at the end of the day, as like I always say, you know, it's either your fault or it's your own fault, right? So whenever you hear people talk about film problems, at the end of the day, you just got to admit that everything is your fault. And it's one of the best ways to make peace with the world, I'm telling you. And if you're interested in hearing more about, again, How Not to Make a TV Pilot, or the other blog post I posted, which is Game Over Making a TV Pilot. Both of them are on the links in the show notes, as well as the pilot itself. Also, really quickly, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at the new podcast, The Film Fiverr. It's a really simple, cool concept. Each episode is one filmmaker, 5 minutes, and that's it. It is the perfect shot of film inspiration, and it's the concise interview all down to 5 minutes. I'm going to link to it not only in the show notes, but here's actually a clip of the show right here.
I had the unique experience of having both my first and second movie come out the same week, and not only that, have Creep come out on Netflix and The Overnight come out on, in movie theaters, and see the difference in terms of how many people were watching it. And of course, because Netflix has, 60 million subscribers worldwide or something, like my movie was available to 60 million people at one point. So tons more people were watching that movie than were actually taking the time to get a babysitter and buy movie tickets and popcorn and parking and all that it takes to actually get someone to the movie theater. And going through that, I became very content with that being the case.
And again, everyone, that was The Film Fiverr, and I will link to that in the show notes as well. A great shout out to the great folks over there and to my friend Paul Fisher. Great guy, and I wish him the best of luck with that. Now, on today's episode of the Dave Bullis Podcast, my guest is returning. He is the CEO and founder of Stage 32. Prior to Stage 32, he was the publisher and editor of Razor Magazine. His latest screenplay, The Endgame, is in production at Covert Media. And his new book, Crowdsourcing for Filmmakers, is now out via Focal Press. This is episode 187 with guest Richard R.B. Botto.
You're listening to the Dave Bullis Podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Dave. This is, as you know, one of my favorite podcasts to be on, and it's great to be back.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, by the way. And when I actually had you on many, many moons ago, and I remember, we were talking about all these different things, and I've seen Stage 32 just grow exponentially. Things have changed in the film industry because how quickly things change now everywhere. And it's also because I've actually improved the recording of this podcast too. I think when you were on, I was still with my old setup that was basically like hanging on by a women of prayer, and I was like, I got to upgrade this thing, and so now here we are. And But it's just, it's as this stuff sort of changes, it becomes a little bit easier, but it also, there's a lot more moving pieces to it. And I know you do a lot of, video work, obviously with Stage 32, where you do like, the free webinars, and also you do the pitch sessions and everything like that. I mean, just out of curiosity, as you do all these things, has it become sort of easier or harder? Because I imagine because you're getting out the word out more and more, and I imagine more and more people are jumping on like the free webinars as you interview various people. And I imagine, on one hand, you're like, wow, this is great because now we have 100 or 300 extra people here. But now it's like, okay, now how many people can this room fit in? How are we going to make sure that it does, the whole thing doesn't come down? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. As time has gone on and technology is advancing, at the speed of sound, as we know, but yet it's kind of interesting because some of the video conferencing software has not advanced as quickly as we'd like. We're fortunate. Everything goes very smoothly. There are certain things that we sometimes sit there and go, man, why can't we have that? And why can't we have that? It seems like over the last couple of years, and I'm not going to name players, there were only a couple of players in that realm, and they kind of controlled a huge part of the marketplace. And I remember going to South by Southwest, I think it was in 2014, and walking, the tech floor, the conference floor, and I would say, with no exaggeration, probably 15 to 20% of the people that were, or the companies that were, on display and kind of hawking their wares were in the video conferencing space, but a lot of them were small and looking for investment and everything like that. And they had some really, really cool software that just never came to light. But now it seems like more and more players are coming in, which I think is always a good thing for the consumer because it pushes everybody and it gives obviously the consumer options. So we're very happy with our setup, and but we're always kind of looking for the next cool thing.
Yeah. So do you have an idea of what the next cool thing might be? Because I've seen some pitches for it, like a VR headset where, we're all in the room together. You've seen the holograms and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So have you seen anything, even recently that made you go, wow, that's actually really cool?
I think on a more base level, like never mind the headsets, I think that is cool. But again, that requires everybody to adapt that technology and to buy into it, which I don't think we're quite there yet. But I've seen some video conferencing where everybody in the room is able to kind of set up their own separate rooms to be able to chat during or after, and I think those are cool, but they haven't been perfected yet. There are some companies that are offering that, but I love the idea of being able to have sort of an online conference or even panels where afterwards everybody who's in the room can network in a way where you're able to see everybody's faces, or at the very least able to see avatars, where a little bit more of who you're talking to, bios and stuff like that. That they're close on. I've seen it. Some people do offer it already, but it's not quite there yet. But that's the stuff that excites me because, again, we preach on Stage 32 that the world is getting smaller by the day and creativity is universal. And, of course, that content creation is happening not only all over the world, but it's happening cross-country, cross-continent, and that's all due to the nature and by virtue of the Internet. So, we'd love to see that interconnectivity become more interactive. And I think that the first to get to the finish line and perfect that is going to have a very big advantage.
Yeah, and I also think that as I see all these social media channels change, like YouTube, for instance, I just see there's opportunities for others to sort of capitalize on that because every time YouTube makes a change, I notice that the YouTubers who are really driving people to YouTube are getting a little, let's just say, disagreeable with YouTube. And I'm always sitting there thinking to myself, if I was a YouTube exec, I would wonder if like, let's just say the top 5 YouTubers or top 10 YouTubers left, would it really hurt us or would it help us in the long run? Because, if they were to leave, there's all that content that they make out the window. Now, where do they go instead? Hey, maybe they make their own website and just post videos up there locally, and then they'll just direct you to their website from now on instead of YouTube. And then on the other side of that, hey, look, we have a bunch of people that are always just making content, irregardless. And, in the long run, we in the short run, we might miss them, but in the long run, hey, you know what? Everyone has a camera now. And, you and I, RB, could go out right now and make a little short film, make it a couple minutes, and put it on YouTube. And right there's some more content.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the world right now, and that's certainly everything that we preach, and certainly everything I preach about, controlling your own content and the beauty of living in a DIY world and having so many options to distribute your content. Look, I hear from a lot of content creators, and it's not new. This is over the last few years, people who are disenchanted with YouTube. I understand why to a certain extent. There is, I don't want to say a class system with certain ways that things are rated or displayed, but there's a little bit of that, although that's gotten a little bit better. But the other problem is that, there's the anonymous contents, the trolls, nobody's standing in front of their own name. There's a lot of reasons to look elsewhere. Let's put it that way. So I agree. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest, that YouTube hasn't addressed some of the issues that I think are obvious issues. But, maybe they like it that way because at the end of the day, it's about the revenue more than anything. So, but if I was a content creator on the other side of that, and being a content creator, I like to look at all my options. And God knows that there are more and more options rising up by the day.
Yeah, very true. I was actually just talking about this at a film festival, and I did a podcast live from the First Glance Film Festival, and we were, and I was with three guests on a panel. We were just discussing all this, and we were just discussing about where content creation is going, and if you are a filmmaker, where do you go? Well, you have basically three options that really jump out at you right away. If I was going to self-distribute my movie, you could go, YouTube, Vimeo, or even Amazon. And those were the three big ones. And basically, I think if we're looking at YouTube, I think that's more of like the everyday sort of, filmmaker, so to speak, where it's like I can just upload anything and there it is. Vimeo, I would say that's more geared towards guys like us, RB, where it's more like the professional level filmmakers. And I always wondered if Amazon could ever fill that gap in some way, shape, or form, and get the best of both worlds. Because after all, look what Amazon just did. They bought Whole Foods, and the first thing they did, RB, was they cut prices and basically said to all their Prime members, "Hey, you get like a bunch of perks for just being a Prime member." And I always wondered, Amazon has the money and sort of the guts to go out and do stuff like that. That's why I'm always wondering if that would end up being just sort of the ultimate disruptor for video content, if Amazon capitalized and got the best of both worlds.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know if it's necessarily Amazon. I will tell you that I think Amazon certainly has the power. I happen to know a couple of the people who run the bigger divisions over at Amazon on the film and content side, and I think they're figuring it out. They haven't quite connected all their separate divisions into one, which surprises me a little bit, if I'm to be blunt. But then again, this has been, a big move for them in a variety of different directions. You'll remember when Amazon Studios first appeared, they really were going after the screenwriters. They were looking for content, and they kind of screwed that up with how they wanted to control screenwriter content and everything like that. And I think they left a bad taste, especially in writers' mouths. But they're making certain moves that are interesting to me. I am privy to a couple of things that they're doing behind the scenes that obviously I can't talk about. But I don't know if it's going to be them. You mentioned Vimeo. I think Vimeo is doing a ton of things right. In a lot of ways, Vimeo is kind of positioning themselves as the anti-YouTube in a way. It's a friendly environment. They really promote the short form content with their short film corner and things like that. They're very interesting to me right now. And there are a bunch of other companies out there that, you can't underestimate the move that Netflix is making. You can't underestimate Hulu's move into original content. You certainly have no idea. The really big wild card in this for me is what's Apple going to do? Apple's announced now that they're going to move into original content. What's that going to look like? Because I don't necessarily think it's going to be the Netflix model. It may be. They may go head on against them, but it may be something different. The one thing I do know is that a year from now, the landscape's going to look a hell of a lot different than it does today. And the other thing I know is that yeah, I don't think it's ever been a better time or a more exciting time to be a content creator. So the options are going to be plentiful and in a lot of ways limitless for people looking to distribute their content.
You know, RB, just to sort of think outside the box here for a second, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to ask this question. Have you ever thought of like Stage 32, like maybe opening the doors to being something like another offshoot of YouTube? And the reason I say this is, or not at YouTube, but Vimeo, the reason I say this is because you have the network there at Stage 32, and you obviously have all the filmmakers, and I always wondered if you ever would open the doors to that, you know, what that would look like. So I can imagine, you know, going to Sundance and seeing, hey, this is the Stage 32 backed film, you know, and this is, you know, in competition, it's this and that. I just imagine it would sort of, it would be a beneficial relationship if you know, if something like that happened.
Yeah, and no, you're not putting me on the spot at all. It's something that we've discussed, you know, for years, and it's we have kind of dipped our toe into that. I'll get into that in a second, but you know, the issue, of course, is, you know, the Vimeos and the YouTubes of this world have, you know, hundreds and thousands of employees, and we're a small team, so we can only do as much as we can do. But having said that, we recognize the fact that we have an incredible community of talented content creators. So to that end, we have been moving in that direction of how do we shine a light on some of them? How do we draw attention to them? Well, one of those ways is, you know, our short film contest. Our short film contest over the last few years has played, you know, at festivals like Cannes and at Venice and at Holly Shorts and at the Richmond Film Festival and Rain Dance, and I'm sure I'm forgetting quite a few others. I think we're up to 10 or 11 now. It's going to be showing at Fest Forums in Santa Barbara in a few weeks. These filmmakers are getting exposure that they would not have gotten before, and they're getting screened not only at festivals but in front of executives and decision makers. And you know, our winner last year went on to score a gig on an MTV show, directing an MTV show, which is part and parcel to him winning this, you know, our contest. The second thing that we've done is we've introduced a section on Stage 32 called Browse. And in the Browse section, you could post your videos and any of your short form content or long form content. It doesn't matter, any of your content. And that allows, you know, obviously you could rate as well. And we, you know, one of the things I'm sure we'll get into, I mean, this is like a crowdsource section. This is exactly what we're, you know, what the part of what the book is about. But the idea of having a section like this is that this community of creatives, it's a very selfless community. This community likes to look at content as much as they like to create the content. At least most people do. Some people, of course, are selfish and just want to do the look at me thing. But a lot, many want to, or most, I would even say, want to, you know, look at other people's content, learn from it, see what else is out there, understand the marketplace, and, you know, rate and review. As we start to rate and review these videos, and as they start to get, you know, we start to see which videos, what content is rising to the top. Well, we have a ton of executives that are in Stage 32, managers, agents, producers, financiers, you name it, and they're looking for this, and they're looking at it. In fact, the thing that really pushed us to do it, besides the fact that we wanted to move more towards what you're talking about, which is Stage 32, you know, being a I don't want to say an incubator, but that's part of it. But certainly, you know, maybe moving more towards the idea that Stage 32 operates as a production company or operates as a production, you know, facility in some ways, or facilitates this kind of production, these productions. Certainly, this has been something that our executives have asked for and have said, look, you know, make it easier for us to find the really talented people. And we're already seeing the benefits of that. We had somebody recently who posted a video in the Browse section, really, really cool short, who, you know, I got a call from a manager asking me if I knew the person personally, and I didn't. But we made contact with her, and now she is in meeting. She's taking meetings to be repped. So it works. You know what I mean? So I know that's a long-winded answer, and it's sort of all over the place. But this kind of thing, when you're approaching it and attacking it, it really is kind of all over the place. But the first thing that you need to do is you need to be able to identify who the talented content creators are, and what content is being responded to. And that's, where we're moving towards.
And you touched on something that I've been wondering, like why, more studios haven't done, and this is, whenever you see a studio movie now, RB, like you see Fantastic Four, they went out and they got Josh Trank, and you see some of these other movies when they go out and they get these indie darling directors, and then it usually doesn't work out for one reason or another, which is a whole nother conversation. But what I'm trying to say is they're trying to find a talent, right? And they're trying to foster this talent and say, hey, we're trying to find somebody in the sort of infant stages of their career. They've made one or two hit movies. Obviously, they've made student projects and stuff, but we don't count those, right? And we sort of say, hey, look, they've made an indie hit film. Well, I'm always wondering why they don't even try to get them before that. And and with the studio, with social media now, if I was a CEO of, like, let's just say, I don't know, what's a good studio to pick? Paramount? And just wondering, should I be out there looking and saying, is there the next Spielberg out there shooting in their backyard? Something like that. And and I could find them, and then they're going to be our sort of superstar, and we sort of bring them up, almost like how a manager would work with a talent, and that say, hey, and you know what, they're going to work with us, we're going to work with them, and we'll do it that way. I just don't understand why more studios aren't interested in doing something like that. Maybe I'm overthinking this. I don't know. What do you think, RB?
No, I don't think you're overthinking it. I think that the studios right now, I mean, look, they want to play in the existing IP world, right? So everybody says, well, why don't the studios make more original films? Well, because it's risky and it's bathed in fear and they're risk averse at the top of the studios. They got to answer to the stockholders, on and on and on. I mean, it's been well documented. But having said that, you're right. All of a sudden they'll say, okay, Director X directed movie, independent movie Y. It was made for $5 million and it made $80 million, and it's got this amazing cult following, and he's so talented. And look at the reviews he got, or she. And they say, okay, let's hire him. Okay, and they hire him, but they don't want him to be that person. What they want him to do is they want him to bring that franchise in. They'll tell him, we want you to have an edge. We want you to, bring your own creativity and everything like that. But really, what do they want the studio? What is that director to the studio? That director is existing IP. And what I mean by that is that director has 500,000 followers on Twitter, a huge cult following. The movie that he produced, directed, has, a huge cult following. They want to bring that genre following into the genre that they hired him for. It's usually a similar genre. Sci-fi to sci-fi, as we saw with some of the Star Wars directors that got hired. They want to bring that following into the mix. Then what happens, of course, when that director wants to be an auteur and wants to take things in his direction and flex his creativity, or her again, they don't want it. They don't want that. Okay. So I think the answer to your question is really what the studios want is they want content that has, existing IP and an existing following, for the most part anyway. I would say 95% of the films they do. Existing IP that has a huge following, a built-in audience, and then they want a director. If they're going to take a chance on a director, they're going to take a chance on a director that has a huge social following and, maybe a cult movie under his or her belt. Now, having said that, you could see who the outliers in this thing are. Look at a guy like Alexander Payne, okay? 20th Century Searchlight, Fox Searchlight, has been in the Alexander Payne business for God knows how long. Alexander Payne has been offered every superhero movie, you name it, every franchise, you name it. They've offered him everything. He's bankable. People love him, okay? His movies do well. Would that translate to a superhero movie? Who knows? Okay. Does he want to do that? No, he doesn't. He wants to make movies like Downsizing, and, Fox Searchlight is more than happy to work with him. And so are some of the other, I think he's done a couple outside of Fox Searchlight, but you get my point. That's really what it comes down to. Why they don't want to find Alexander Payne when he's doing Election in 2017 is because they don't see the value in that. And that's why a movie like Election, if it was made today, might be straight to Netflix, or, it might be $1 million indie that, A24 ends up distributing or something like that.
By the way, Election is a very damn good movie. Probably my favorite movie from him, other than Sideways, because I think Sideways is probably his magnum opus.
Yeah, one of my top movies of all time, Sideways. I love it.
Absolutely.
Great piece of screenwriting, too. Every screenwriter should read Sideways.
Yeah, it's by the way, I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody, but I love the ending, too. I love everything about it, and it makes sense of the movie, too. It doesn't, just sort of it doesn't patronize people. You know what I mean? It really makes you go, wow, this is this one guy. Both are who are having midlife crises, but they're each experiencing it in a different way, and how what they expect from life, and it's just such an awesome movie.
It really is. It truly is, and you're right about the ending. And again, a studio wouldn't make that ending. I mean, not today, and even back then, it was Fox Searchlight was was well regarded, obviously, as an independent sort of arm for Fox.
Yeah, and so as we sort of talk about this also, about it would be an indie movie. Election would be an indie movie that A24 would end up distributing. I always go back to what Spielberg was saying, and about how the whole film industry was going to implode, and all the big blockbusters were eventually going to start falling. I always wonder how true that actually is. I know right now as we're speaking, RB, I just saw today that Blade Runner 2049 apparently is expected to be considered a flop. It's supposed to open up to a very quote-unquote weak $45 million. But, I always wonder, will there ever be a time that ever happens? Because for every movie like that, or maybe even Alien Covenant, you kind of go to the other side of that and go, well, look at the latest Star Wars film. How much money did that rake in through merchandising, the action figures, not only just the film sales, but the breakfast cereals and the bags of coffee. And you always wonder, is there ever going to be a time where they're just going to say, we made enough Star Wars, we made enough superhero movies, and I wonder if we did ever go back to like that 70s period, RB, where it was like more of the easy riders. Then we go back into the 80s and we see, more of the other indie films. And even going to the 90s, like Pulp Fiction or Clerks. Is there ever going to be a time where studios are on more of the hunt for stuff like that? Because I think the last big, and I could be wrong, the last big independent movie that was really big, I think might have been Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, look, I think the answer to your question is kinda, maybe. No, I think the answer to your question is really no. I don't. They're not going to give up on the Star Wars, and not when they spend this kind of money, and the audience is still there. I think though, when you talk about the 70s ever going to come back, the Easy Riders, the auteur period, I think it is back, and I think it's happening on Netflix and Amazon and everywhere else. I was pitching a project recently, and I had an executive say to me, it's a character piece, and it was like, I was kind of just sitting there listening to this, and they said, he said, with Chinatown, Chinatown would never get made today, and I'm like, of course it would. It would be made as a limited series, or as a series, you know what I mean, on something. Would it be a movie that's going to open 4,000 screens? Of course not. It's just not the way it is. Now, having said that, there are some companies that are taking chances on original content that speaks to sort of the auteur. You look at a movie like Baby Driver. This is a movie that, probably about 30 million for, a film that really was sort of it's kind of an outlier. I mean, let's face it, in this world. Now, it did very, very well. Every time one of those movies does well, what happens? The lemmings start coming out. Everybody wants to make the next one of those. Now, it also goes the other way. I think that part of what has hurt the independent film scene a little bit has been the overexuberance of films that premiere at Sundance at times. You look at a movie like Baby Cakes, or I think Patty Cake, whatever it was, the one that came out of Sundance, where they paid, I think, $8 to $10 million. The movie made, I think, less than $200,000 in its opening weekend. Sometimes buyers get festival drunk, and I think when that happens, the next festival comes around, everybody gets gun shy. Right now, I have a screenplay that's in development at Covert Media. Covert, the CEO of Covert is, has been around for, probably 15, 20 years doing exactly this. And him and I, have dinner and drinks all the time, and we talk. He comes back from certain festivals, or we hang out at Cannes or whatever, and he'll just be like, "Man, it's just really, really rough out there," because every time a film like that fails, and everybody gets kind of out over their skis with exuberance, in the pre-sale, they get the distributors and the people handling pre-sales to buy in, and then it flops. It makes it that much tougher for the next one, fair or unfair. Even if the project is not even close to being similar to the one that failed. So that's the problem in this business right now. There's a lot of fear. And then the other part of it is that, a lot of the talent, this is another big part of this. A lot of the talent is running to TV. They have more options than they ever had before. When you're going to cast an independent film, or when you used to go to cast an independent film and you wanted that independent film darling, well, you were competing against a few other independent films. Now you're competing against HBO and Netflix, and if they can do a limited series and it only takes 4 or 5 months of their time, they're going to go do it, and that takes them off the market for 4 or 5 months. All of these things play in to how the market is dictated. So the studios know this. The studios know that the safe bet is, to go with the existing IP, think about it from this perspective too. I know I'm getting on a long-winded answer here, but the reality of the situation is there's so many variables that go into the questions that you're asking, including, let's go back to the idea of the auteur, right? Mm-hmm. When was the last time that you heard somebody say to you, "I'm going to see this movie because of director X"? It doesn't really happen anymore.
Exactly.
You'll hear it on TV sometimes. You'll hear like, or sometimes it's the showrunners now that get hot. Like, oh, did you hear Vince Gilligan's producing this thing? Or did you hear that Michelle MacLaren, who was one of the big directors on Breaking Bad, is now, one of the showrunners and one of the lead, showrunners and lead director on The Deuce? And then you go, oh man, I got to see that. It's amazing how it's shifted and it's changed, but it's just the truth. The studios know that. The stars aren't even as big as they used to be. I challenge you, because we're dealing with this right now. Think about 15 years ago. Take yourself back to 2000, let's say 3. How many actors between the ages of 25 and 35 could open a movie? Or would you love, if you wrote a movie for a character in that age range, could open a movie? Well, you had people like, Matt Damon, Ed Norton, Pitt, Clooney was a little bit older, but you get my point. Gosling, all these people, right? Think about it today. Think about the male leads between 25 and 35. And I'm not saying who are talented, okay? I'm saying who can open a movie, especially in the independent world. And what I mean by that is they have to be able to be valuable enough to sales agents to be able to pre-sell the movie. There's not a lot of them. So that changes the whole dynamic. It makes everybody go after the 6 or 7 actors that could actually do that. And those 6 or 7 actors get 20, sometimes 30 offers a week, maybe half of them, maybe a quarter of them with money attached to them. So it makes for a very, very difficult market. And all of this trickles down. So the studios know that they can get away with, look, let's just bring the audience in. The cast is kind of secondary in a way. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they were thrilled to have Gosling, for Blade Runner, but you get my point. You look at that. They got Gosling, they got Ford, they got one of the hottest. You talk about an auteur, you got one of the hottest directors in Hollywood, somebody that everybody knows and seems to appreciate, some more than others. But and this movie's underperforming, and it's based on existing IP, and it tracked high, and and here you are, like you said. I mean, $45 million or less for a film that they're talking about probably was $150 before P&A. So it's just a very, very strange time right now in the marketplace. It really, really is. So I think that there is a sea change that is happening. I think it is still happening. I think it will shake out. This business has a way of shaking itself out every 20 years or so, and we're 20 years removed pretty much from the peak of the last really big independent movement. So I think we're in the middle of that sea change right now, and I think part of that, without question, is the rise of prestige television, for lack of a better way of putting it.
You touched on something, RB, that I always talk about on here, and that is the celebrity director doesn't really exist anymore. You have Carpenter, you had Lucas, then and then if you sort of go from the 70s, the 80s, and then in the 90s, you have Tarantino and Smith and Rodriguez, and then after that, you really sort of don't have that celebrity director where people say, "Hey, so and so directed this." If you look at the directors that they have now, nobody really says like, "Hey, this was directed by let's just like a Josh Trank." Nobody says, "Hey, Josh Trank directed this. I can't. I'm going to go out of my way to see this." Nobody says, and it's nothing against Josh. It's just the way that the nature of the business has changed. And it's the same thing with like Whiplash. People saw that because of it was a damn good film, by the way. And it was just the fact that it wasn't, I forget who directed that. Its name escaping me at the moment.
Damien Chazelle, yep.
Damien Chazelle, yeah. How could I forget that? That's the It guy, right? So, and then, it's just the fact that it's in the film world, it's always about the movie itself now, and it's just about what it's about and the marketing now. That's another whole key part of this is the marketing, which I think ties into also about your new book, by the way, which I wanted to get to, is about how you're crowdsourcing for filmmakers. You partner with AFM, and I'm sure you get hit up all the time, RB, because, obviously because you're the CEO of Stage 32, but also because, you're out there all the time talking to all these different companies. And I'm sure everyone goes, "Hey, RB," they're probably telling you what they're looking for. And you're probably like, well, yes and no. But also because I imagine, you have all, you're like me, you're a networker, you're very good at getting your foot in the door and talking to people. And I think that's, a key part of being in this business is, relationships and, how you sort of, build those relationships. So I know I'm jumping around. I'm sorry, but there's a point to this. There's a point.
Yeah,
I swear.
No
I swear, RB. So that just ties in with your book. And I really wanted to ask, what was the impetus to write this book? And, does it answer a lot of these questions for filmmakers where it's like, I'm sure they come to you and they're like, "RB, where the hell do I start?"
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying it's called Crowdsourcing for Filmmakers, but it's really for all creatives. It's for if you're an actor, if you're a screenwriter, cinematographer, crew. It really fits for everybody. The impetus of it came from I was moderating a panel at AFM back in 2014, and it was on film crowdsourcing, and it's funny. I tell this story in the book. I'll tell it really, really quick. They gave me an iPad when we went up there so that people from the audience could shoot in questions. And I was, even though we started by pretty much saying like this is not about crowdfunding, it's about crowdsourcing. It was amazing how many questions came in asking about crowdfunding. So from the beginning, I was like, wow, this is really a new topic. It's a topic that people really do not understand. Especially as it relates to filmmaking. And I thought it was a very timely topic when it was brought to me. And when I was asked to moderate the panel, I was excited about it because we were just sort of at the beginnings of what we've been talking about for like the last half hour, which is that that DIY, control your content, having all these options, the power coming back to the content creators, that we're seeing right now. So it was exciting. When I got done with the panel, I was approached by Focal Press about the idea of doing a book on film crowdsourcing. Focal is is the leader. I think they own about 60% of the market in the film education space. And I was thrilled to be asked, and they were starting a new imprint, which was AFM, the American Film Market Presents, and they wanted this to be the first book under that imprint. It took me about a year to decide to do it because I knew it would be a huge undertaking. The other reason, too, was because it moves so fast and because it was a new topic and it was something that was kind of evolving. And as I sat down to write the book and I started interviewing people and going through it, I realized that, this is really, really a misunderstood area and an area that's really evolving. And so it was exciting for me to dig into it. And, I conducted probably close to 100 interviews over the course of, a year and a half, 2 years. And I'm excited to have it here now. And it's it's a really interesting topic. It's the first book ever published on film crowdsourcing. It covers everything about audience building, your online and offline efforts, how to find your crowd, how to move your crowd. People don't understand that the power of the crowd is so significant and has been a source of success for so many of the projects that you're seeing now that are hitting TV, that are hitting theaters even, that people are bringing a built-in audience with them. And that is appealing to producers and financiers and managers and agents. And it doesn't matter, like I said, if you're an actor I could tell you stories. I'll tell a really quick one, but just to give you an idea of the social proof and the social impact and how important it really is. I was in a casting meeting for a friend's film, and they were down to the final role that they wanted to cast, and it was a significant one. And there was two actresses, and they were both fantastic, and they were struggling, and the room was kind of split as to who should get the gig. And I hate to say this. Well, I don't hate to say it because it is the new world that we live in. It came down to the social following of one of the actresses. It was very large, and they wanted that audience. They wanted to bring that audience in. That's a very, very small example. But the book covers, again, all aspects of building an audience, all aspects of how you engage an audience, how you move that audience, when it's okay to go in for the ask. There are two chapters on crowdfunding because, I didn't want to shut out the people that thought the book might be about crowdfunding, but more importantly, because everybody confuses crowdfunding with crowdsourcing, which is fine. But what people don't understand is that a majority of what goes into a crowdfunding campaign or a successful one involves crowdsourcing, and that those crowdsourcing efforts need to start 3 to 6 months before you start a crowdfunding campaign. So there's two chapters on that. There are also 4 case studies in the book. 3 of them are films that are just fantastic. I have a short, a documentary, actually 2 shorts, but they were put together in very, very different ways, and they use crowdsourcing in very, very different ways. One of them used crowdsourcing. They crowdsourced locations. They crowdsourced character names. They crowdsourced plot points. And that's what people don't understand. Crowdsourcing is all inclusive. It's a really hot topic right now. Crime outfit police. The police are using it to prevent crimes now, to go to the communities, to try to find out trouble areas and to use the power of the community and their efforts. You're seeing television shows now that are based on crowdsourcing. It's just a really hot topic and a really timely one. And again, I'm very excited that it's finally here and out.
You mentioned how you have to do that soft launch, that prep before you do crowdfunding, because I've seen so many people, honestly, RB, and they wait until the last minute and they're like, all right, I'm going to launch and then we're going to email everybody. And I'm like, wait a minute, and they're always like, well, what went wrong? And I'm like, well, that's part of it. I go, you have to prep everybody, and you have to really, it's not like the days when the last time I crowdfunded anything was like 2010. That was my own project. Things have changed so much in 7 years. It's unbelievable because everyone has a project and you really have to stand out. And, you mentioned also about the social media aspect. It was funny because I actually had something similar to that happen to a friend of mine. She actually hired an actress based upon her social media following, and it was nothing but problems from square one because she wouldn't actually promote the project. And then when they finally got her to promote the project, she posted about it and nobody cared. And a friend of mine who was a producer told the director, he said, the reason that all these guys are following her is not because they want to see her, what project she's going to be in. They want to see her modeling photos. That's what she sort of built it up from. And that's sort of what they expect from her social media accounts.
Yeah, I think that's shame on the producers. They should have looked into that a little bit more. I mean, I think that, look, the problem with most people that have, when people come to me and they complain about, like, let's say Stage 32 isn't working for them, or, they've been in this business for so long and nothing's happening, or they're on other social media sites and they're getting nothing out of it. And I'll go and I'll look at what they're doing, and, 99% of the time, and I say that with no exaggeration. In fact, it may be 99.9% of the time, they're not putting in the effort. They haven't done the research. They don't understand what they're supposed to be doing, or they don't care. They just want to go out there and be, a broadcaster and not somebody that engages. You see this all the time. So in a lot of ways, it's shame on the producer. People that understand the power of the crowd, and again, the power of the crowd lies in the fact, and this has been proven, that if you tell somebody how great you are, okay, people are going to look at you like you're egotistical, or they're going to look at you like, another genius. But if somebody else that they trust, if a trusted source says, no, you really got to look at this guy, he's doing some pretty amazing things, that's power. That's really powerful. And what people do not spend enough time on is building those relationships, identifying the people who fit into what they're looking to accomplish. And what I mean by that is, what's your brand? What's the brand of your project? Who will most likely, or who have you identified that is a prospective mind, like-minded person or organization, group, whatever, that will connect with that same, shares that same ideology or shares that interest, common interest, or whatever that is. And then how do you engage them? Okay? Because eventually you want them to be you want them to be boots on the ground for you. That takes a wealth of time. It really does. And that's why a lot of people fail. Because the reality is everybody says to me, I get asked all the time, what's the shortcut? What are the shortcuts in this business? I'm looking for the shortcuts. And I'm like, first of all, if you're looking for shortcuts in this business, you're in the wrong business. Second of all, there are only two. It's just, it sort of goes against what I just said. But there are only two, and they're patience and persistence. And when it comes to crowdsourcing, you need to be extremely patient, and you need to understand that really at its core, this is relationship building. You're identifying the people who you want to engage, and then you have to put in the time to engage them and not be off-putting and not be you got to be selfless and not selfish. And I always say, just think about it on a base level. Think about your relationships in life. Okay. Think about your quality relationships in life. Think about how long it took you to decide who you wanted in your life and how you wanted those people to be in your life and what kind of relationships you wanted to have with those people. That takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of work. And the reality of the situation is that most people don't want to put in the work. So I always say, if you want a competitive advantage in this business, put in the work. Okay, put in the time. Networking, building those relationships, those things should be a job. You should want to do them. You should be sitting there having goals of how many people you want to connect with a week, or how many, how are you going to do it? There should be a strategy involved in how you do it. And it should all be rooted in selflessness and not selfishness.
Yeah, like I always say, RB, there's three things to get your foot in the doors anywhere. And that is, one is be professional, two is kill with kindness, and three is offer value. And if you can do those three things, I don't think there's a door anywhere that you couldn't open one way or another.
I couldn't agree more. Really well said. I especially love number three, offer value, because if you really, again, if you want to give yourself a competitive advantage on social media and at any conference you go to, any situation, any networking event, any situation where you're looking to get in front of people that could help move the needle for you, you better be coming with value. You better offer value. I couldn't agree with that more. That is a big part of the book. And, we talk about methods and ways to do that. And I just couldn't agree more with that statement.
And you mentioned too, and by the way, thank you, RB. I appreciate that. That's, again, like I said, I imagine you and I are very similar in that we're networkers. We're very good at that. And, that's something that I found over the years. Everyone, says, hey, how, Dave, how did you do this? Or how did you get past this, gatekeeper, so to speak? And I'm like, that's all I did. I go, those three things. Because especially if you treat the gatekeepers like, they're pain in the asses, or they're, or you start getting pissed off at them, they're the ones with the power to turn you away, one. And two, their boss is going to ask them flat out, what were they like? And if they say, well, yeah, the script was good, but they were a freaking jerk off, then they're just going to say, well, forget them, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And the other part of it is that the gatekeepers, the gatekeepers get approached 1,000 times a day. I mean, the gatekeepers are constantly, they're under siege with, look at me, look at me, look at me. How do you stand out? How do you build a relationship with that person? I have a little anecdote in the book about an award-winning, Oscar-winning director and a scene at the Austin Film Festival that I think everybody's going to be a little bit stunned by, but also is going to enjoy very, very much, because it illustrates, two people approached him, one burnt up in flames, and the other one ended up becoming a very, very dear and trusted and cherished friend, and somebody that ended up getting an enormous amount of help from this director and producer in launching her Hollywood career. It all came down to approach. It all came down to one person's approach was absolutely horrendous and selfish, and the other person brought value to the conversation. And he was so taken by that it led to a career for this girl. It opened a million doors. So, look, at the end of the day, I love when people in this business say, oh, my God, it's so hard. There's 50,000 scripts a year that get registered with the WGA. And, oh, my God, look at all the people that are, looking. But here's the thing. If you carry yourself right, if you figure out, if you narrow the field, it's like when I was an actor in New York, and we used to go on every audition until somebody said to me one day, why don't you just go on the auditions for the parts that you feel you're right for? And it really changed. I mean, it's that simple, but it changed everything. Well, it's the same thing with building an audience, right? I mentor a lot of people. I do consulting for a lot of people. And the first question I'll always ask is, who is the audience for this project? Or if they're looking to brand themselves, who's the audience for your brand? What is your brand, and who's the audience for your brand? And you'd be stunned at how many times, or maybe you wouldn't be, how many times people say to me, everyone. Well, guess what? You have just failed test number one, and you have absolutely no clue. I challenge people the other way. I say, name your favorite films of all time. Have you ever met somebody that didn't like that film? Of course you have. Okay. You show me the greatest films of all time. I know people that hate Casablanca with a passion. They think it's fucking meaningless. Okay. They think it has no plot, which I don't understand, but I've had people tell me that. You have to know who your audience is. And once you do that, and then once you understand how you approach them and how you bring value, guess what? All this competition that you're talking about, all the, my God, the 50,000 scripts and all the people that are going out for this role and you're cutting it down significantly. You're increasing your odds of success exponentially. It's that simple. Okay. When people say talent rises to the top in this business, it's 90% true. The other 10% is that you got to it's not enough to put the talent out there. The people that put the talent out there and are successful understand how to navigate, understand how to get that material to the people, to the difference makers, to the gatekeepers. And they do it by identifying them and knowing how to engage them. And that is that gives you a significant advantage if you can learn that. And that's really at its core what this book is all about, how you go about those things. And again, we use a ton of examples to illustrate it and a ton of successful, success stories and case studies to show it. But people who have read the book so far, all the people who did, the peer reviewers and everything like that, the notes that came back were that, it's fascinating how these people used really concentrated, strategic approaches to crowdsourcing to launch projects that were not mainstream and would not be attractive to everyone. They were attracted to a segment, but they figured out, or various segments, and they figured out how to address those people and get them involved and give them ownership, which is a huge part of crowdsourcing. You're giving the crowd ownership. And what's more powerful than that? What's more powerful than feeling included? Feeling that there's an inclusive part of this project that you're involved with. I mean, there's power in that, but you got to know how to harness it.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And that when you say that, who's your audience for this movie? Oh, well, it's everybody. That is where they lose people. And that's also when they go to pitch this movie to producers, to look for funding, they'll say, well, we'll try. And that's that their pitch has to be more unique and centered about just this movie and go to those producers. And you and I have talked about this before too, where they go to producers who make comedies and they're like, hey, you want to make my horror film, or or vice versa, and the producer goes, I wouldn't even know where to begin with this, because they didn't do their research and they're just trying to pitch anybody who will listen to them, which just means the producers themselves don't feel special, and they just tune you out right away.
Look, I mean, that's just another. You're hitting upon something that's one of my biggest pet peeves, and that's it. I mean, we live in an information age. We live in an age where you could find out anything pretty much about anybody you're looking to research at a click of a button, on your phone, on your computer, on the go, anywhere. And yet, people will literally expose themselves as, in my opinion, frauds by not doing that. And why I say you're a fraud is because if you understand how much work goes into building a career, if you understand how much time and effort the person you're approaching has put into building, a career and a brand and an audience, you will not ask them to do the work for you. And what I mean by that is, first of all, you won't approach them with misinformation or ask them, in the example that you just gave, they're a horror producer and you're pitching a comedy. You won't waste their time that way because you're going to come away looking terrible. But I can't tell you how many people that probably happens. I'm not exaggerating. It probably happens 5 or 6 times. I'm not even joking, a day across all my social channels, across Stage 32, where people will say to me, what's Stage 32? And I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. You can click the link in my bio. You can Google is your friend, or can Stage 32 hire me as an actor? Where they don't realize that it's, a social network and an educational site. What you're doing right there is that you're showing that this is a hobby for you and not a legitimate pursuit, in my opinion. That's at least the way I take it, and I can tell you that there's a million executives out there that feel the same way. If you're not doing your research, if you're not doing your homework, you're not being true to yourself, and you're telegraphing the fact that you're not really serious about it. And you certainly, if you're carpet bombing the hillside in your pursuits, whether it's marketing, branding, or crowdsourcing, you're doing yourself a disservice as well. All you're doing is wasting your own time, and you're eventually going to waste other people's time as well.
When people talk, and when you mention hobbies too, RB, have this people view this as a hobby. I notice that a lot of people, they focus on the output rather than the input. And what I mean by that is they're focused on what this is going to give them. So they want to make a movie, or they want to act in a movie, and they're really focused on what the hell it's going to give them in terms of output, meaning like, I'm going to, I'll be able to, become famous. I'll be able to become rich. I'll be able to whatever. And there's really no concern about, are they any good at this, which is the input? Like, what am I going to put into this to get that? And that's, I think, is a big disconnect when they meet somebody like you, and they say, "Hey, RB, you're meeting managers all the time. Why don't you introduce them to me?" And it's you're like, why the hell would I introduce them to you? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what benefit is that to you? What are you going to get out of it? And why would you even do this? Like, why would you, threaten your network and your contacts for some person you just met?
Yeah, and it happens all the time. It happens to my face. It happens on social media. It happens all the time. I'm not the only one. It happens to, I have a lot of friends in this business now, but the friends I have in this business, people don't understand, 7, 8 years ago, I knew a few people in this business. A lot of the people that I've met in this business, I have met through networking on Stage 32. I make no secret of this. I came to my manager through relationships I made on Stage 32. The film the script that's in development at Covert came through connections I made on Stage 32. A couple of the movies I've produced and a couple more that I'm in development on as a producer came through Stage 32. And it all came from the fact that I treat my networking as a job. I treat it as a job. And I don't ask anybody for anything until I've built a relationship with them and until I have offered my help to them. And I don't care how big they are. I don't care if they don't need anything from me, or if I feel like, there's nothing I really can offer them. I ask anyway. And sometimes you're surprised. Sometimes the ask from them will be very, very small, but it's something or it seems small to you, but it's something that's significant to them. You have to treat your networking like a job. I know I've said this before, but you also have to you have to hone your approach. People will hit me up all the time on Twitter and say, look at this, look at this, look at this. I've never responded to any of them. People will join Stage 32 and they're not on the site 3 seconds and they're DMing me saying, can you give me money for my movie, or can you read my script, or can you do, even though I have a disclaimer at the top, like, do not ask me this, do not ask me that, because that's not what we're here for. You're here. I gave you the platform. You go work the platform. It's amazing to me. It's human nature. So, you can't get pissed about it all the time. But certainly sometimes you look at people who have been around this for a while and you realize they should know better. I actually can I tell you a quick story? This is actually it just came to my head just now. So I was at Cannes a couple of years ago, and I got approached I was at a party, and this guy comes up to me, and it's, you're at a party. It's late at night. You're at a party, music's pounding. And, everybody's having a good time, and it's late. The work for the day is kind of over. You're kind of unwinding a little bit. And this guy comes up to me, and he says to me, he goes, oh, you're the CEO of Stage 32. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I don't even think he gave me his name. But he stuck his phone in front of my face, and he goes, I want to show you something. And, sometimes people will do that, and then they'll show me, like, the connections on Stage 32, or show me something cool they've done or something like that. But this time this guy wanted to show me a trailer he filmed for a martial arts movie, and I'll never forget this. And I said to him straight out, I got to be honest with you. I don't know you. I've never met you before. I go, are you on Stage 32? And he goes, well, I don't know a lot about it. So you're not even a member of Stage 32. And he goes, why don't you tell me about it? And I said, no, I'm not going to tell you about it. And I said, and no, I have no interest in your film or giving you money for your film. I don't know you. I have other projects that I'm working on with people who I have a relationship with and who I built a relationship with. So fast forward, last month I'm at Holly Shorts, and I'm speaking with Alex Ferrari from Indie Film Hustle. Him and I do a panel there every year on this exact subject, on building an audience and on crowdsourcing and on building a presence online and also building a presence offline and branding and all that. And we talked for almost 2.5 hours. And this guy was in the audience. And he came up to me after it was over and he said, do you remember me? And I said, how could I forget you? And he's like, well, just in case, he goes, I want to show you the new edit. And he showed me, he put the phone in front of me again. This is after 2 hours of talking and after having that experience with me. And I said, well, is this the new edit because you made the film? And he goes, no, we're still looking for funding. Do you know anybody who might want to be interested in something like this? And I literally said to him, I said, there has to be a camera on us right now, right? I'm being punked here. And he was like, what? I go, have you joined Stage 32 at all yet? He goes, oh, I've been meaning to. Now this is a true story. Okay. And people might think that that's sort of like, again, an outlier kind of story, but no, there are versions of that story that will happen at pretty much every single festival that I will speak at, or every conference I speak at, or even just in the day-to-day. It's pretty remarkable. But again, not to focus on the cynical, let's focus on the positive to that story and to all these other ones that I'm saying, to not do, is the fact that it brings me back to what I said earlier. If your behaviors are the exact opposite of that, if you're taking the time to, cultivate your relationships and you're being patient and persistent, like I said earlier, guess what? You have such a huge competitive advantage over that person, regardless of if you have equal talent or maybe even slightly lesser talent, because sometimes, somebody will, if they see the talent in you and they see the potential in you, not everything has to be, a staggering work of genius from the beginning. They're going to want to work with you because of the type of person that you are and the approach that you have. In this world, with so much content being created, with so much competition, with so many people moving into this pool, so to speak, people want to work with other creatives that they like, that they trust, who are like-minded and who they can work with again. And that's why, you know, we used to say 4 or 5 years ago, oh, it's so important to find your tribe. It's never been more important than now. But the way you find your tribe is, again, by narrowing your focus a little bit, you know, condensing it down and making it more concentrated, quality over quantity, and then executing on message and on approach. And that makes all the difference.
You know, that guy, the fact that he actually went up to you again. I mean, honestly, RB, I've seen that too, where people have just basically, I've gotten people they've seen people I've had on the podcast. They will actually follow me and then ask me, hey, can you introduce me to that person? I'm like, no, I have no idea who you are. I said, I have no clue who you are. I have no idea what you want to do. The number one person that happened to, by the way, was when I had Kazian Ilviz on here. Kazian is, as you know, RB, A-list producer. So like people were like DMing me like crazy, like, can you introduce me to Kazian? I said, I was very nice about it. I'm like, I can't give away his information. I mean, my God, why would I do that for somebody I just met 5 minutes ago or 5 seconds ago? And I said, trust me. I said, it wouldn't do you any good to have it anyway. Just trust me on that one. And most people were very understanding, and then some people would be like, "Oh, you know, who the hell are you anyway?" I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. I'm a nobody." So you know, so it's like, what are you asking me for then? You're the one asking me for information, but
well, first of all, don't say you're nobody, because you bring it again. You have a very successful podcast, and you're bringing value to a large community. And if people can't understand that, you know, based on everything, first of all, you know, the way that you get to your guests is, I'm sure, through the proper channels and the proper approach. And that alone should be something that, and I'm sure most people do. A lot of people probably understand that. There are a lot of people out there trying to do film podcasts. There are a lot of podcasts that have failed. And one of the reasons why they fail is the same reason why a lot of projects fail. A lot of times the people that are running these podcasts think that they have something that's just so outside the box and everybody's going to want to do it. And the reality is they're not building the relationships that make people want to, one, come on, and two, listen. And those things obviously go hand in hand. So it's, you know, don't minimize it, because in a lot of ways what you've done to build this audience and to get the guests that you're getting and to get the quality of guests of an always, I mean, that's huge, is you know, through crowdsourcing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's you never know who somebody else knows. Speaking of that, RB, I just got a tweet from a mutual friend of ours. Gary King actually just tweeted in and asked when the three of us are going to have drinks together. I would love. I've been trying to have. Listen, I went to Gary King's film at the Phoenix Film Festival like 6 years ago, and I think we've been trying to have drinks ever since. So you tell him anytime he's ready. But okay. Gary, you know, it's kind of cool that Gary tweeted out right while we're having this conversation, because Gary's a good example of this. Gary has built, you know, Gary's done a bunch of successful crowdfunding campaigns, and they've all revolved around crowdsourcing. I mean, Gary understands the power of the crowd. He understands how to engage his crowd. He understands, like, his supporters, like, he took his time building up supporters for, you know, the brand of his film at the beginning. And, you know, it's another conversation that we can get into, but, you know, which brand comes first, the brand of you or the brand of your film, and the brand of you or the brand of your project and all that stuff. But he understood that early on it was the brand of his projects that he needed to concentrate on. So it was more, his efforts were more dictated towards finding people who were interested in the subject matter and the themes of his film than they were about him as a filmmaker. But over time, of course, what happened is if you execute and you prove to that audience that you deliver what you promise, they become fans of you. And that's what ended up happening with him. The audience ended up following him, and the power of that audience was huge. And I got to see that firsthand when his film played at the Phoenix Film Festival. He brought a nice crowd with him. He had a mountain of support, and this is, you know, 6-7 years ago. The difference in tools and platforms that you could use now for you know, to build your audience has you know, just grown so significantly. So it's kind of cool that he tweeted during this, because he's a really good example of somebody that gets it. Yeah, he does. By the way, he's been on the podcast. Really, really cool guy. We talked a lot about a lot of different stuff, and also we both know Alex Ferrari. I know you mentioned him, and
Yep.
really another really cool guy. So again, it's just meeting all these different people and seeing what's going on, and just I've been very fortunate with this podcast, and I actually had on Dave Lagana, and his episode will be up in the coming weeks. By the time this airs, it'll be the past weeks, but Dave is another really cool guy, and he's actually doing he started off in Hollywood, ended up in pro wrestling, and now he's doing a joint venture with Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's just really cool, right? So RB, I know we've been talking for about an hour now. I just want to sort of surmise everything we've been talking about. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you may have wanted to right now, or anything you want to say to put a period at the end of this whole conversation?
No, I just think that, I know we've talked a lot about crowdsourcing. We talked a lot about content creation, which I think is great because, I mean, it is such the renaissance in independent film. And then, of course, the plethora of outlets that are seeking original content. It's never been a more exciting time to be a content creator, in my opinion. But that's only half your job, right? The other half is building an audience, building those relationships, being able to engage and move an audience. And I think that's just so staggeringly important and something that, again, will give you a competitive advantage. I would urge everybody, and I'm not saying this, look, Stage 32 is a free site. Yes, we charge for some of our education, but there is a wealth of free content. There are hundreds of hours of free webinars, podcasts, blogs. I think we have over 1,500 blogs now that are all film related. It's all free. It's free to join, obviously. If you're not familiar with Stage 32, we've been called LinkedIn for the film industry, kind of like that. We've also been called Lynda for the film industry, which is the top educational site on the web right now. We like that. But the reality is that you'll be instantly connected with hundreds of thousands of film creatives worldwide. It's concentrated networking. And it's, I use it every day. I just don't know what to say. I mean, everything that has happened to me in this business over the last few years, including this book and how it came about and how I even met Jonathan Wolf at AFM and all that, it's all come through my networking efforts on Stage 32. So I just can't recommend being on there enough, and I can't recommend treating your networking and your crowdsourcing efforts as a job, because it is, and it should be. And if you're serious about doing what you're doing as a career, it needs to be.
Yeah, very true. And you need to, like you said, RB, you need to have goals. And even if when you're writing a screenplay, write X amount of pages per day or per week or per month, however you want to measure that. And like one of my mentors once taught me, are you handing out 10 business cards a day? You know what I mean? Are you going around building up relationships? Are you actually, treating this like an actual job? Are you actually being professional about it? And, not just like looking to see who can do what for you, but, actually looking to build a relationship, which, sometimes the reason people don't want to do this is because it's that dreaded word, hard work, which is actually two words, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard work. It's the hustle. It's all that rolled into one. It's a little bit of everything. And it's sometimes people just don't want to do that because, it's hard. Right?
Well, look, I mean, I say this all the time. Look, it took Spielberg almost 30 years to get Silence made. It was a passion project. Nobody, it's Scorsese, and even at the height of his powers, nobody wanted to make this movie with him. It took, Spielberg to go to India to get the money for Lincoln, or at least partially. This business, no matter how big you get, it's a grind. And the moment that you accept that, okay, and the moment that you commit to that, and the moment that you take that as a challenge rather than an obstacle, that's the moment that all of a sudden you become free. Because the reality of the situation is this business is hard. It is difficult. Even when everything goes right, it's difficult to get a feature film. I'm going through it right now off the ground. I mean, we have the financing for the film, Covert's financing the thing, and it's still been a challenge for a variety of different reasons. And part of it is the marketplace, and part of it is, like I said earlier, the available talent. There's always going to be challenges, I guess is my point. But the reality is, if you commit to it and you understand that, look, this is going to be hard work, but this is what I want to do, you become free. You really do, because then you wake up every day and you say, let me just move the rock, up the hill a little bit more today. Let me just, move it a little bit more, push a little bit more. I'm just going to push every day. And my goal every day is to win every day. Some people say it and some people do it. Be one of the people that does it. Be one of the people that gets up every day and commits to it. And you will see the difference. You will see the benefits. But it all comes down to you not listening to the voices out there, not reading all the statistics about how hard it is and all this other crap, but understanding that every positive action that you make for yourself puts you in a position of better odds, okay? And that's the way I look at it every day. What's the relationship that's going to move the needle today? What's that piece of work I'm going to do today? What's the networking effort I'm going to make today? Where am I going to look today to try to find an opportunity or a fit for my material? Or what is it? You know what I mean? Who can I help today? I guess is the first question I try to ask every day when I go through all my messages on Stage 32 or on Twitter or on Instagram. I look at those things and I say, okay, who can I help? You know what I mean? Is there somebody I know that needs my help? Is there somebody that's built a relationship with me that needs my help? There's power in that, man. There really is. And it does come back to you. So like I said, commit and do it. And you'll be surprised how happy you are by doing it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, RB. And I think that's a great way to sort of put a period at the end of this whole conversation. So RB, where can people find you out online?
Oh, so yeah. So on Stage 32, obviously, when you sign up, you will get a welcome message from me. I respond to all of those. So if you want to just say hello and that you joined, or even if you heard us today right here, you can let me know about that. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at RB Walks Into a Bar. That's RB Walks Into a Bar. Exactly how it sounds. Please come follow me in those two places. I'm always trying to put out some great content and share some great information on those two platforms. And then, of course, the book is available. The book is called Crowdsourcing for Filmmakers. Crowdsourcing for Filmmakers, not crowdfunding for filmmakers. Crowdsourcing for Filmmakers, and it's available on Amazon through Kindle, paperback. There's a hardcover version as well. And if by chance it's not available on Amazon, because sometimes I know they have a little bit of supply problems or whatever, you could go to Focal Press, Focal/Rutledge. I'm not sure exactly what the domain is, but it's Focal Rutledge. And if you put Crowdsourcing for Filmmakers into Google, you'll find it. And they have the book obviously they're the publisher, so they have the book as well. So those are pretty much the ways to get to me.
Awesome. And I will link to that all in the show notes, RB, at DaveBullis.com. Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. RB. Can
I just say one last thing?
Sure.
I do have one ask. If you enjoyed the show, and if you got some information out of this, and if you do pick up the book and you do enjoy the book, my one ask, of course, is to leave a positive review on Amazon and Goodreads. That always helps, and it would mean a lot to me. So that's my only ask.
And also, everyone, just a bit of advice: if you do meet RB at a party, don't try to pitch him right away, or don't ask him what Stage 32 is. Obviously, go up there and be a part of it and be a part of the conversation. You don't. It's like RB and I were talking about. You don't want to be that person that just comes out of the woodwork out of nowhere and immediately asks you for the sun, the moon, and the stars. It's just I still don't get how people can keep doing that over and over again, and they never get the hint that it doesn't work. I've never seen anyone that's worked ever. But RB, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man, and I really do wish you the best of luck. And whenever you want to come back on, man, let's keep this discussion going.
Dave, listen, man, it was far too long this time. I'm available whenever you need me. I love coming on this show. You do it so well, and you ask such great questions, and you know your shit, and you do your homework. And let's grab that drink, by the way. Let's get Gary and go grab that drink.
Yeah. I got to come out to LA sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because I've been talking about that with some friends of mine, just coming out to LA, even for like a weekend or a week or something like that. So I have to plan that in the very near future. So RB, and I really appreciate the kind words. I really do appreciate that, because I love hearing feedback of the show. Because again, I started this podcast just to do something creative, and it's kind of spawned on its own thing now, which is also great and scary at the same time. But RB, I wish you the best of luck, man. Have a great Saturday, and I will talk to you very, very soon, man.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it, my brother.
Find Dave at davebullis.com. Please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.